Hello, everybody, and welcome to the space. I'm so glad to see everyone. It's so lovely. I don't actually use Zoom that much, so it's nice to be with all of you in this space. So we'll begin our presentation today with a short meditation. So I invite everyone to find themselves in a very comfortable seated position, whether you're sitting on the floor or on a chair, grounding yourselves, balancing yourselves on your sit bones, your feet placed flat on the floor. Roll your shoulders back, open up the chest. Take a nice deep breath together. Inhale and exhale, allowing your breath to be like the waves of the ocean. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. I'm going to give a short Thanksgiving address for the waters as we contemplate the ocean today through music. We give thanks to all of the waters of the world for quenching our thirst, for providing strength and nurturing life for all beings. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and ocean, snow and ice. We are grateful that the waters are still here and meeting their responsibility to the rest of creation. Can we agree that water is important to our lives and bring our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to the water? Now our minds are one. Thank you and welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Shayna. Um, I usually say a couple words about the theme of the day and trying to keep in mind sort of the overarching theme that has been running through these sessions, and that being what we're calling sonic ecology. And we've been in past sessions talking about different ways of thinking, ways of exploring what that means, and the different artists and music we've been listening to have presented different types of ways of embodying sonic ecology. And so, one of the people that we're inspired by is a sound or a field recording engineer and researcher, Bernie Krause, who's from and has lived a long time in California. And so I'm going to just bring him back into the conversation, some of his ideas. But today, the theme that came out for me is what I'm calling becoming fluid. The music that we'll be listening to is we're going to hear more about the project, but it initially started as being called the Ocean Project, and Hania, the producer of this, and the curator, is going to tell us a lot more about that. But right now, I just wanted to dwell on becoming fluid, how we can relate to that, how we can become that. So that to me is looking at ourselves as an ecology of currents and forces and waves or singularities, the ways in which these currents or forces align and resonate against each other. And so I think that this is sort of like a is for me, it's been an important way to find new ways to experience myself, it's like being conscious of things. And there's an old thinker and writer, Robert Carlyle. My friend told me about this the other day when we were talking about sonic ecology, and he said, Robert Carlyle asked, "How can you tune a stream?" And his answer was to move a rock. I thought that was very interesting, because by moving something in the stream, then the whole tonality changes, the whole like sonic landscape changes. And so I was thinking along the lines of how we can use that analogy in our lives. So how can we see sonic bodies in our lives as things that can be repositioned to allow the stream to flow differently, to allow the melody of the stream, the river, to change, to tune ourselves to that, to be able to have the power to tune ourselves to that. And so I guess that question is like, what rocks in our, if we're going to take that analogy, in our lives, can we move to change the ecoacoustics of our individual and collective territories? So bringing Bernie Cross into the conversation, we talked about these three. There's a framework that he developed, and talking about three different spheres of sound in our lives: biophony, which are the non-biological natural sounds, so like the sound of wind in the trees or grass, waves of the ocean. Geophony, which is talking about sounds produced by organisms in a habitat, and how a habitat is composed of a plurality of sounds, and the geophony of that is that habitat would be very complex in this case. And then the anthrophone, anthrophony, which would be the human-made sounds. And so I guess I just wanted to say, how can we think about, I use the analogy of the rock, but that rock being a signature. So let's say a habitat has a certain sound signature, or any sound is inscribed as a signature, something that we can recognize. It's a sign. It's a signal, and it becomes inscribed in our network, and of meaning making. And so in philosophy, and they sometimes talk about that as a signature. So my question is, how can we really start to go deeper into identifying certain sonic signatures that are in our lives? And then how can we learn how to be fluid, and how can, in a way that will allow us to reposition these signatures that can lead to new ways of becoming, new ways of knowing, new ways of relating to yourself, or to the nature around you, or to other people. And so that's something that I've just been thinking about on this theme. So let us now, I'll give it over to Andrew to talk a little bit more about what we'll be doing today.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, just those thoughts take me into all these different streams of of different directions of how to take that analogy or that image and apply it to my life. So, thank you for that. What I wanted to do right now was to kind of introduce our guest and the project, the album that we're releasing today. In fact, we just released it on Bandcamp just before the call, and I'll talk more about that later. But to get right into it, maybe just give a little bit of context of how this kind of came to be. So many of you know that Jonathan and I and Shayna, we lived in Calcutta for many years. And while we were there, we met a beautiful soul and fellow musician who studied with our Guruji as well. And there's too many stories to tell, but really there's so many beautiful memories that we've shared. And not only in India and in Calcutta and Shantiniketan, but also in Italy and Greece, and spending time together. So it's really wonderful to have you here, Hania, and I want to introduce Hania Luthufi to everybody. And and I'll let Hania speak more to the kind of inception and the inspiration for the album. Um, but we're really excited to be able to release this on Monsoon Music, and and so before I pass it off to Hania, I wanted to just play a little teaser, just a little sample of the album, but something to get us in that spirit. Um, and so, one second here. And so we'd like to present Eternal Tides, a musical offering to the oceans, uh, created and produced by Hania and Jonathan. So from that, I will pass it over to you, Hania.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. It was really beautiful to watch that little piece with all of you. Somehow I haven't revisited that in a long time, and so it was. And also, I haven't been to the sea in months, even though I live in an island, because of the current situation we're all in. So it felt very, very nice to watch that little piece. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. So that piece was actually a short little excerpt of a longer composition by an incredible Greek musician, Christos Barbas. He had imagined the undulating waves um, on his ney, which is a very beautiful flute the um, from Istanbul, from Turkey, actually. Various different shapes um, dictate which area of Turkey this flute comes from. Yeah, that's Elmar by Christos Barbas. The album sort of came into conception gradually in stages. A dear friend of mine in Calcutta, Kanika Mukherjee, called me one time, quite late at night, around 2 a.m., and very excitedly asked me, would you like to create some music for the ocean? And me always feeling very at one with the ocean, always going to the sea. If ever I had a question, if ever I felt emotional, I would search for a moving body of water and sit there. And answers have often come to me. Silence will always come to me. And of course, if somebody asked me, would you make some music for the ocean? There was no question about it. And and then I just kind of dwelt with that thought for a while. The intention, I let the intention form. First of all, I thought I was going to make the music. I was going to compose, sit by the sea in various parts of the world and compose and kind of just let it grow. And then I thought, oh, there's so many incredible fishing communities around the world that talk about livelihoods. by the sea. And I had written a brief about that. I thought, oh, why don't I ask um, the fishing communities of my country, the fishing communities in South India and North India, Greece, Turkey, to to teach me a song and then record them, record different parts, the waves from different parts of the sea, and so on. But then I just dwelt with that again and spoke to a few musicians, and we all thought that it would be nicer if we allowed more space and reinterpreted and offered whatever came to us as soundscapes, as musical landscapes or oceanscapes in this case. And we allowed that to grow, and that's what it has slowly become. I invited musicians from who lived close to the sea. Initially, um, that was what I thought I had in mind to invite musicians who live by the coast in various parts of the musical family, all scattered all across the world, and that's what it became. We had in the album we have Ciro Montanari, whose original home is actually in Bologna, in Ravenna, which is not too, I mean, which is not too close to the sea actually. But he is someone who has a very, very deep connection to the sea and has played a lot of music, has done a lot of riyaz, a lot of practice by the sea. Same goes with Jonathan. I feel even though Calcutta is not just by the coastline, it's really, really close to an incredible delta um, where there's um, a whole, a vast collection of islands and seawater with river water, and people live very, very close to water and the sea. Actually, it's quite close to the sea, to Diamond Harbour, which is a river and where river and sea meets. And then many beautiful musicians from this little island called Crete that Andrew and I spent a beautiful time in. This music school called Labyrinth Musical Workshop, where musicians and masters meet every summer to learn really beautiful, authentic instruments from across the globe. Over there, I met these wonderful musicians, Kelly and Ross, her partner, who's not a part of the album, but who was there as a guide and as a mentor, overseeing. And then I will speak about the other musicians who are in the album slowly as we go along in this beautiful session.
Great. Thanks, Hania. That's beautiful to hear that. How the it really flourished, or how it came to be through all of
I
that time.
will um, I will read a small passage that both Jonathan and I had written and put together. I feel it would be relevant
Please, yeah.
as an ending to this invitation to talk. Um, Eternal Tides is a meeting of musical friends that bring together traditional and contemporary musical ideas from around the globe. The music curated is a collection of cross cultural soundscapes inspired by the need to bring a deeper and more holistic awareness of the spiritual importance of the great oceans in our lives. Contemplating the oceans and my connection to these bodies of water throughout my life brought many emotions and colors that inspired the original compositions. Sometimes music touches on the calm surface currents. Sometimes it expresses the turbulent storms and dynamic waves. At other times, it confronts the almost infinite vastness and depth of these spiritual bodies of water. I'm honored to be a part of this project as it brings awareness to the oceans at a dire time of need when multinational corporate globalization and world politics is neglecting the health of the single most important source of life we depend on. I'm also proud to be a part of this movement as it's utilizing contemporary cross cultural art as a vehicle of global awareness and transformations beyond the limitations of the ego bound self. Eternal Tides asks us to contemplate on our individual and collective role in the global ecosystem, bringing us to question our innermost essence and its connection to the world we live in. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. I can't, I almost just want to listen to the silence that's in the background of you when you stop speaking, because I don't think any of us on this side have such beautiful nature sounds that are natural, that are, coming. So, um,
Yeah, it's the city. I'm actually located quite central in the city of Colombo, and yet there I am greeted by the most beautiful bird sounds and squirrels. So this little, almost bell sounding creature is this sound of the squirrel here, the Sri Lankan squirrel.
okay. So what we wanted to do was to jump into listening to the music, and so what I thought the best way to do that would be to listen to the first track. It's the first of a series of three tracks, um, uh, by Eleftheria, um, and it's entitled Imagination. And what I thought we could do in the spirit of the contemplative listening sessions we've been doing is to listen to music in different ways. And so I thought with this one, just as an opening, maybe we can all listen with the connection to inspiration, um, and then afterwards we can go around and do a really quick response share to the impact of the music to us. Um, so let me just get this up here. Okay. So I thought we could just go around and share that impact, maybe with one word or one motion, something like that, and we can all go around. I don't think I can unmute you. I mean, I can unmute you, but I can't unmute you all at once. So if everybody wants to unmute or unmute when they want to go around, and we can just do this as people feel like we don't have to go in any order. So anyone who wants to just jump in can start. I can jump in and start just by thinking it immediately brought me to the beaches of Puri and just these like long beaches with all of these fishing boats and just this kind of motion of the waves rolling on, but not only the waves, also the boats kind of coming in and running up on the beach. That wasn't one word at all. I'm sorry. That was my that was a description.
My one word is peaceful.
Mhm.
Your turn.
I think kind of provocative.
Sorry, we had an overlap there. Ray, you go first, and then we'll come back to Dave.
Sure, I was just going to say provocative.
Provocative, nice. Dave,
Relaxing.
relax.
A feeling of like a solo travel.
Sea breeze.
Susan.
Angular.
Something innocent. Something I feel innocence and a childhood of sort.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask what the instrument was and who was playing it?
Of course, this is the instrument is called a qanun, which is, you could say it's an Eastern harp.
Okay.
You have to, it's like a swarmandal, which is an Indian instrument, which is also very similar to a harp. It has many strings. I think various sizes have different number of strings. Perhaps John would know precisely how many strings. Each svara has, I think each note has about 2 or 3 strings, if I'm not mistaken. The qanun is quite similar, except that it's larger. And the person who played this piece of music is a really, really wonderful, wonderful musician, Eleftheria, who her name means freedom, actually, in Greek. And we played a small concert at a cafe once, and I was, of course, a little bit like, oh, it's a new country for me, and I just landed, and then there's this little concert, and she saw that I was a little bit nervous, and she looked at me and said, you know, one of my earliest and oldest teachers told me that every time you play music, you play like a child. You play not knowing. You play in that space of playing. You have to just hang on to that word playing and always remind yourself that you're playing and not thinking.
Thank
And
you.
so all that explained why all her music just sounded so free and so gentle and really pure in some ways, because she was coming from that place, or she reminded herself to come from that place.
That's nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe we can move over to Jonathan, who will present the next piece to listen to in the next discussion.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Well, like just on that last thought, generally when I go to the ocean here in San Francisco, there's you approach, like I approach this, and there's a reverence. There's a surrender to it. There's a entering into a respectful relation, and then there's right after that a playful running into it and playing with it like a child. So I think I resonate with that. Okay, I'd just like to say a couple words about this next piece. This is going to have a video that goes along with it of Japanese abstract Japanese calligraphy art that was done by a friend of mine here in San Francisco, Fumio Yoshikawa, and it felt like it was a good piece on the album to share because of her art. And I made a video to a track that is from the CD that I composed. That's a duet that I recorded in India. Andrew wasn't there with me, and if I was with Andrew, then he would have recorded the second part. I would have played shakuhachi, and he would have recorded the saxophone. But I was by myself in that sense, and I played the shakuhachi part and then the saxophone part. So it was literally a duet with myself.
You weren't supposed to tell them that, John. No, I'm joking.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, technology is not hard to not imagine that. But I met this artist, Fumio, at my university here, CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, and she was presenting on contemplative art practice. And she did a presentation of a show that had been put on, like of her art in the gallery. And I met her, and I improvised shakuhachi music as she did a demonstration of her calligraphy. And so in quite a short interaction before we played to get to know each other a little bit, I just sort of said, I'd like to improvise along with you. And she said, well, it's going to take me about 10 minutes to make the ink, and which is her meditative practice before she starts. So she was grinding her own ink. And the whole audience was focusing so intensely as she was doing this, because she had such a presence when
we were all meditating with her, essentially.
Yeah. And she was at the center because she was doing that practice, and everybody was waiting to see when she would get the brush and do her first strokes. And I was playing shakuhachi with that. And we really connected with each other through our artistic mediums, just beyond the words of our initial interaction. But some of the things that came up in our conversations afterwards was talking about how cultures and artistic expressions produced through cultures, how they are really oceanic. And so this track is sort of a meeting of two different oceans. It's coming from my training in Japan on the shakuhachi, and as well as the other side, the Western side of the jazz and improvisation and composition. So we were discussing how do we really enter into the oceanicness of another culture, when at first it can seem very intimidating. You don't know where up, you don't know the ecology of it. You don't know where up is and where down is. Sometimes it can be very disorienting because other cultures have completely different ways, like starting from like certain assumptions about life, metaphysical aspects of life, and ontological aspects of life as well. And we were talking about these things, and just sort of asking that question: how can you, when you confront another culture or tradition, how can you open yourself to it in a way that's beyond understanding, but more of an affective resonance? And I was expressing that that was my relationship to her art form, is that I don't know much about Japanese calligraphy, but I want to understand how I can approach this in a sense, how I can get some initial bearings, and so I guess what else? We talked about the idea also of how do we avoid taking this, like the very superficial aspects of these oceanic cultures and misusing them, which is what's usually called appropriation these days, which is a very important thing to talk about in the modern world when we're surrounded by um, a lot of um, a lot of misuse of cultural image and cultural forms, traditional forms, which are being appropriated into capitalism and sold as cultural flavors of consumption. And I said, how can we approach that? How do we avoid that? And she just looked at me with these oceanic eyes, and there was a certain kind of presence and a silence that really transmitted something to me that I felt was really actually just a good answer to that question, or a good way of being with that question, that paradox, that tension, you could say. And it's really, for me, it was really about, again, opening into that affective relationship and trying to be sincere in feeling it, feeling where it's coming from. And so anyway, that's a little bit about our interaction and this art that you see. I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about her and why we're watching this, because I think that her art is conveyed that oceanic sense to me. And I felt that the fluidity, becoming fluid, what we were talking about earlier, is so much contained in the brushwork of East Asia, of Japan and China. The flow of qi, the Tao, as it flows through you as an instrument in a way, So let's. This is maybe I'm not sure if we'll listen to the whole track, but we can listen to some of it. Yeah, so I guess that was one of the questions would be how can doing a transdisciplinary practice, how can that teach us to be fluid? And that's something that I learned from this experience.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because as I was listening to it, I was really hearing the idea of like the ocean meeting the horizon and the meeting point with the shore, and how those kind of interactions marry together because
Hmm.
they are so intimate. And sometimes you're, on a boat in the ocean, or you're just looking from the shore and you're looking out and you can't tell like where the sea stops or where the ocean stops and the sky begins, and it doesn't matter. It feels like that forever kind of feeling. And I think you captured that well with the music as well, and that kind of merging together of not only like of shakuhachi and saxophone, but with the artwork and the idea of the ocean's fluid through all of that. And I was also thinking about the idea of, appropriation as well. And it was interesting the way that you move from this kind of free and open, more alap, kind of space into time, and how the time seemed to be like this space of really playing with the idea of those horizon or those shoreline spaces where you have those, you know, those overlapping of those ideas, you know, the overlapping of the sand into the ocean, you know, the sand that's underneath the ocean floor, is that the ocean, or is, you know, like you're always being pulled back in, you know, and the ocean's coming up and breaking over. It's like it's folding into one another so beautifully, and I really felt that in the music, and I feel that that united kind of energy of, you know, of almost three separate things, like ocean, sky, shore, you know, east, west, you know, art, you know, and those different artistic kind of platforms really coming together.
Nice. Beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Shana. Uncle Alistair.
I just like the visuals. I was getting from the drawn shapes. It looks like shells. Looks like you're underwater, kelp, jellyfish, shadows of exotic-looking fish, and also the sounds. I think the sounds were really good. All the overtones that reminded me of whales and other animals that you can only hear with underwater. And I thought it was a good marriage of both. I really loved both the music and the artwork. It was really spectacular. So well done.
My experience was different. Since it's not, when we talk about water, it's not just oceans, right? We live by a lake. And there's days when sometimes the water is perfectly still. And Al's taken some photos of this where the reflection of the trees and the water is almost disorienting, because you can't tell what's the original image and what's the reflection. And when I was listening to it, it brought that image to me, especially with the two instruments, because it was like the saxophone was the original image, and then the shakuhachi was kind of the reflected image of the water, of the woods and everything in the water. So yeah, so that was more the image I was getting, was actually Dickey Lake up here in Ontario. And just this you were talking, you alluded to it, Shana, when you talked about like the horizon point where you have the ocean and the sky meeting, but sometimes here it's where the reality and the reflection meet, and sometimes you can't see where that point is. Anyway, so I thought it was wonderful too. Nice, very nicely done.
Great. Thanks for those thoughts.
Vio.
Oh yeah, Vio.
Hi, Hania. Congratulations on your project. It's so nice to see you. I can't even contain the joy. So about this piece, I like to say that for me, it brought me inside of the water of my body. And for a moment, I remember when dancing Buto and feeling the music inside of each sense. So I closed my eyes and then I opened, and they were this beautiful, there was this beautiful art of like drops of colors. And I almost could see the sails. And so, yeah, I also took notes because I had so many input. Yeah, but how can I almost found like their universe, but inside of my body, almost like I wanted to move. I wanted to feel it inside of the body. So
Beautiful.
thank you.
Yeah. I think thanks, Vio. Let's move to the next piece. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to share, if you wanted to say something, maybe the next piece you can come in and say something, share something based on the next piece, and I'll hand it over to Hania to present the next piece and the next contemplative question.
Yes. Sorry, I think I just unmuted when you had tried to unmute me and there was a mute unmute kind of scenario going on. Sorry about that. Um, this next tune um, is has been played and recorded by my dear friend Kelly Toma, also from Crete, and she's accompanied on the duff by her friend Maricha Katsuna. This piece was for them. Um, it started off as a challenge a little bit because I wrote it in based on a raga Charukeshi, and and I wrote it on Jap Tal, which is a 10-beat cycle, and they have spent a lot of time, many years, practicing makam music and Greek traditional Cretan music. Spent many years, and so they have this deep respect and honor for Indian classical music. It's a little bit about the cultural appropriation thing that Jonathan touched upon, where they didn't really want to spend a week trying to get a gist of something to play it. They really wanted to come from a different space and look at it from a wider um, angle of sorts. So they shared this feeling with me, and Ross, who's the founder of this wonderful music school, Labyrinth, he spoke to all of us and said kind of the same thing that Jonathan has been talking about, and Shayna and Judy, this like where reality and reflection meet and become one, and where sea and sky meet and become one, to come from that space and not one is taking from the other, or you know um, like to grasp is very different to accept and envelope and hold, which is what we are essentially doing when our mind is not in the way, or when our ego is not in the way. We are being held and holding everything around us. Um, so this piece I was inspired to call it compassion, and we all came to agreement with this. And so my question, while we listen to this piece, is how can listening with compassion, how can it deepen our sense of absorption or listening? That is the question I feel we could all sit with when we listen to this piece. Over to you, Andrew.
Beautiful. Wow. That one has a special place, I think, for me. Even having played Charukeshi so many times, and being one of the ragas that I love to go to, especially for um, more cross cultural or more coming from that place of 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 oneness, where it's not, like you said, the reflection or the original. It's like just really there. And some of my deepest moments of connection to expression have been with Charukeshi. um, and and that also makes me think too of the interconnection. We're speaking about the oceans, and it's called eternal tides, but the tides are controlled by the moon, and Charukeshi is obviously connected to the moon as well. And so that, how the moon relates to our oceans, and how that controls them. So there is this interconnectedness piece as well that comes up. um, and how that also speaks to everybody here, and how in so many different ways we're all connected from different moments of our life, and different places, but we're here in this moment enjoying this music together. So I feel very grateful for that. Maybe if anybody wants to share that hasn't shared anything that's coming up for them, this is a good moment for that. And then we'll maybe wrap it up, just kind of stay on time. I know that Hania does have to leave to teach soon, but we would like to give the space for people to share who hasn't.
If I can say something, like I love lira player. Well, I love lira and sarangi too, and for me it was like special piece um, to connect, but those two cultures, those two instruments. I love Kelly. I love what she does. I love her energy, and I like this piece just blow my mind. I know I can't really. I have a hard time with expressing that, but like she did such an amazing job to feel the Indian music and the all the ornaments and everything she does, and hearing that on Cretan, like on Greek lyra, it's amazing. And still, she put some influences from Crete in the end, which is so amazing. And for me, it connects to like when I went to Crete to the labyrinth. It was such a big spiritual experience for me too, because I connect to so many people, musicians on so many levels. Like we just basically the best conversations I had just sitting with the people and enjoying the sound of silence or music, and we didn't have to use words. It was beyond something beyond words. So this place was very close to me and also was close to water. I remember when I was leaving Crete, I was sleeping by myself by the sea. And when I was listening to this tune, I actually remind myself of being completely alone at night in the Cretan beach and just listen to the waves. And I remember that really it was a beautiful experience for me. So this piece it's really amazing. Like beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah, and even there, so many more connections, and how we have played together. We've played Charukeshi, and you were playing on sarangi and cello, and yeah, so many beautiful connections there. Does anyone else want to share anything that's coming up for them? Okay, then. Um, well, but then what I would like to first do is thank you, Hania, for being here with us on the other side of the world.
Thanks,
Yay,
Hania.
Hanya!
Yeah, thank you so much for making this beautiful album and putting it together, and sharing it with us as well, and for us to be able to release that on Monsoon Music. It's we feel very grateful and honored as well.
Well, I couldn't have done it without all the amazing family around me. Jonathan was so important towards the later stages, especially because when you're in the studio and you're listening to everything and all the time, then you stop. Sometimes you wonder whether you can trust your ears. And Jonathan was really important at that point. He came in and listened to everything and helped me make notes. And he really, I mean, he was such a supportive energy and a co-producer in so many ways because of that crucial time when he came in. His experience helped me look at things the way it needed to, and help me steer it in the right direction. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, and also thank you to all of you who have joined us tonight. Some familiar faces who have been joining us regularly. Thank you, and some new faces as well. Maybe the last thing we can do is I just put into the chat a link to the album on Bandcamp, and we decided that just for all of you, if you like and you would like to support and get the album, we made that available. We just released it, but we put it as a minimum offering of $5, which maybe tomorrow we'll raise that to 10, but that's a small thank you offering. But you can also offer as much as you feel if you'd like. But that's how these things are not really quantifiable in these ways, I don't think, so easily. So it's a thing that we leave in the hands of everybody. We really hope that you enjoyed the stories and the sharing around this music, and maybe even more than that, we hope everyone finds that moment, that space and time where you're able to actually sit and listen to the whole album. I think it's very important for us in today's world to actually make that time and to sit and listen in a concentrated way, where we can really reflect and absorb music. We're losing touch with that, I find, in this society. So it's something that I think we have to act on individually and collectively. So thank you all tonight.
Contemplation, not consumption.
Exactly.
T-shirts are being made.
Wonderful.
To sell, obviously, to consume the T-shirts, but not to sell. Oh, joking.
I wanted to throw in a little bit. The last piece, you could close your eyes and listen to the music because there was no video. And so you make your own impressions from the music, which was very beautiful. I sort of it was very Indian, but it had that Greek flavor to it. I could sense that. But I thought the second song, which you had the accompanying visuals of the art, to be much more powerful to my senses, because not only am I listening to the music, but I'm also watching the calligraphy and the drawings and the art, which related me to, for example, scuba diving on a coral reef, seeing the life of the coral reef, the colors, the organisms in the coral reef, and maybe more directed. In other words, I don't have to make things up about it. It's there, it's in front of me, the art and the music. And I'm wondering if as an extension of your project is you could have artists from around the world who can relate to some of the themes in the music to do what the second clip did with the Japanese calligraphy. And I thought that was really effective. I loved all the music, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that when you add the video, for example, the very first clip was on an ocean, just the waves of the ocean conjures up things in your head and that adds to the musical experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think that adds a lot. It's a different experience. Like going back to our previous session with Tom Richards, we literally experienced the difference between listening to a piece of music and then listening to the same piece of music with a visual. And his visuals were definitely not as evocative necessarily, because there was text and whatnot inside, but just even that different experience. And how do we I think it's how do we choose that experience for ourselves, or how do we cultivate, how do we practice that? Because that happens to us. You know, we're on a computer, or we're on a TV, or we are in a park, and any of those moments could feed us something. But then how do we choose to be fed by different experiences for different reasons? But yeah.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed the experience. It was great. All three pieces of music were really, really good, really nicely produced, and appreciate Hania's insights into what went into the creation of her thinking processes to create the art. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I know Hania has to leave very shortly because she has a student arriving. So maybe we can wrap up here, and if we want, have an after party. It's up to whoever wants to stick around, I guess. There's maybe more to be said, but thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hania. You know, and then maybe that we can give you the the door, the key to the door if you need to leave. So we love you and miss you, and thank you so much for bringing yourself and this music to us.